10, Jack the Ripper. Okay, alright, so we're starting off with some Ripper tube or Ripper talk, whatever the kids say. These messages still haunt cold case enthusiasts to this day. I mentioned before in like earlier videos with some controversy that the case was solved due to DNA evidence recovered from one of the victims, Catherine Eddowes. But there remains skepticism and ongoing investigations for this case because, you know, it's over 130 years old, and can we really be sure? According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the evidence strongly suggests Barbara Aaron Kaminsky, but still isn't enough to close the case. But this is the main event, the boss letter. The boss letter is one of the creepiest letters he ever wrote, and it is below. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. P.S. wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. Creepiest letter, and it still makes people want to check out that case to this day. The worst. Number 9. Pressed to death. Remember the Salem witch trials? If you've been following my videos for a while on this channel, you may recall how much I hate the Salem witch trials, like that whole debacle. If you admitted you were a witch, you were saved. If you were accused and didn't confess, you were hung. Like, I could never sit through a production of The Crucible, even though it's a good play. I know it's a good play. Because I'd be imagining going back in time with my cell phone, dressed as like the devil with some pyrotechnics, and then like play like Panic at the Disco or something ridiculous on my phone with my degree under my arm, because like that's extra ooh, a woman with a mind, you know? And then they burn me at the stake and I'd be like, you know what guys, guess what? I'm the devil. None of these bewitches are mine. Anyways, this message from the past is from the headstone of Giles Corey, who was pressed to death, which is what the headstone simply reads. Giles Corey, pressed to death, September 19th, 1692. When he, along with his wife, was accused, he refused to allow himself to be put on trial. In order to get the confession out of him, they piled rocks on top of him, to which Corey replied, more weight, until he died. Keep in mind, Corey also beat to death Jacob Goodall in 1675, and he was only asked to pay a fine for that, but he was pressed to death to be a witch. Sort that out, right? Oh, so frustrating. Anyways, number 8, the lipstick killer. We talk about a lot of dark stuff on this channel, so warning, here is another example as to why people are terrifying. The lipstick killer was the name of the infamous criminal who plagued Chicago in the 1940s. After the lives of 3 people were taken viciously in 1946, a chilling message was left in lipstick on the wall of Frances Brown's apartment. The message read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." The killings were eventually pinned on William Herons, who maintains his innocence to this day. Strangely enough, most of the evidence held against him fell apart. He claims that his arrest was the result of abuse and an overzealous attempt for Chicago police to catch the killer, so it could be that the lipstick killer was still out there somewhere fighting the urge to kill again, and maybe he succeeded. We'll see. Number 7, a real life howler. I think we can all relate in various ways to the fear we get when our parents like give us that look or like say our full name, so I can't even imagine what it would be like to hear it from the grave. This next story is from Christian 8, and I'll let him tell it. My family went out of town for spring break and bought a Ouija board. A few minutes into playing, the kitchen sink turned on all by itself. When they asked who it was, the board read, Renee. My great-grandma's name was Renya, and for some reason it kept going over the numbers 3 and 4. Later on, my mom realized that she was 34 at the time that she died. Since then, she refuses to even consider playing it again. She thinks it was her grandma telling her she's still watching. Her grandmother was always very against Ouija boards, so she felt like she was getting in trouble with the dead. Good on you, Grandma. Stay away from Ouija boards, kids. Number 6. A grim warning. This next one came from Reddit user E4E49 and damn. This message is clearly terrifying because even though it's a good thing, the fact that it came from someone who passed away freaks me the heck out. Here is the tale. My dad and I drive through the hills a lot. He's pretty experienced and I don't get car sick, so he really puts his boot into it. However, one day we were coming around a bend when I felt something press hard into my chest, like a hand. It pushed me back against my seat, but I managed to turn toward my dad and say quietly, "Slow down here." And the next moment a car came speeding from the opposite direction. There was a near collision. He laughed nervously as I felt the hand soften on my chest, and I looked out my window to see a cross and flowers. Someone was looking out for us that day. So sad, but so, like, hopefully that's like something they remember. Now the dad's probably not as much of a, no, he's probably still a lead foot, but you know, be safe about it. Number 5, Alois Erlmeyer. World War I, World War II, and will there be a World War III? Well, Alois Erlmeyer, a German man in the 1950s, made such a prediction that many are waiting to come true. Alois stated that the Third World War will begin in the Middle East, and I quote, "Big naval forces are facing hostility in the Mediterranean. The situation is strained, but the actual firing spark is set on fire in the Balkans. I see a large one falling, a bloody dagger lies beside him, and then impact is on impact. 2 men kill a third high ranked, they were paid by other people," unquote. There's plenty more to the prophecy, and the creepiest part for me is when he says, "Immediately revenge comes from across the large water. However, the yellow dragon invades Alaska and Canada at the same time." What does that mean? Let us know if you've read the full prophecy and what your thoughts are in the comments. It's pretty creepy considering the events happening at the moment in the Middle East are explosive to say the least, so hey, you know, the 2012 thing never happened, so maybe this won't. Hopefully this won't, but who knows. Number 4, geoglyphs. The Nazca lines are some of the most mind-boggling ancient geoglyphs on the planet. Due to their sheer size and precision, no one quite knows why they were created and how, but some speculate that they were drawn to symbolize a visit with alien life. Located 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, created by Nazca people, there are over 70 precise depictions of animals plus an image of a decapitation and a large humanoid figure known as the astronaut, right? Some of the designs of the geoglyphs measure around 30 miles, and experts have no idea how or why these drawings were created with such precision. The astronaut is the strangest one of them all, as it kind of looks like it's waving as well, and then it's got like a really big round head, like it's wearing a helmet. Were these drawings an attempt to contact perhaps creatures they saw in the sky? Or is this a message to the future, giving us a sign that something not of this earth once visited? Number 3, Zoroaster. The Zoroastrian religion was one of the world's oldest practiced monotheistic religions based off an ancient Iranian prophet named Zoroaster. It may have originated as far back as 4,000 years ago. After a vision of a divine being, he convinced his followers to worship Ahura Mazda. His prophecy of how the world will end is the most terrifying on this list. He said that a comet named Gokhyr will strike the earth at an undetermined point in the future. Lava will flow across the earth, burning all unrighteous beings, while those who are righteous, the lava will merely feel like warm milk. A prediction similar to this one is also in the Bible in Revelations 8:8-9, but hopefully neither come true, but it is really creepy that there are parallels between the two. But again, who really knows? Number 2, the third secret. The Fatima mystery is probably one of my favorite conspiracies I've ever heard about while doing this job. The Vatican have kept these messages a secret in the Vatican archives since the event. In 1917, 3 children allegedly saw an apparition of the Virgin Mary in a field. 70,000 people, after having heard, gathered in the same sheep pasture where they witnessed a spinning silver disc in the sky. The children received 3 messages from the specter, which the Vatican have kept hidden away, and only revealed a censored version of them, allegedly. However, one of the messages leaked out, and apparently it said, and I quote, "We are here, we have been since thousands of years ago, and that they will return again," unquote. Aliens? We don't know. It's nice that if it is aliens, it's nice that they actually were like, hey, just so you know, we've been here for a while. Last but not least, number 1, Saint Hildegard. Saint Hildegard was a 12th century Benedictine nun who was renowned for her extraordinary visions and prophecies. She started writing down her visions when she was in her late 40s. Good on ya, and wasn't someone to go along with any rules. She also was an incredible composer, but with this prophecy, whether you believe in prophecies or not, foretells the end of the world. And I quote, "Before the comet comes, Many nations, the good excepted, will be scoured with want and famine. The great nation in the ocean that is inhabited by people of different tribes and descent by an earthquake, storm, and tidal waves will be devastated. It will be divided and a great part submerged. Considering a lot of scientists predict California will fracture by an earthquake and become the new Atlantis, this prophecy is pretty eerie. Also, with the fact that the ice caps are melting and even parts of Canada like Nova Scotia and the East Coast might be underwater, kinda creepy. It also could be pretty North American arrogance for me to assume that the great country in the middle, mixed with a whole bunch of different people, is the place that she's talking about. But what do you think, guys?
Coming in at number 10, we have the prediction of World War III. A lot of mystics have predicted a third world war, including perhaps the most infamous of them all, Nostradamus. Nostradamus was a 16th century French apothecary and seer. He is best known for his book Les Prophéties. The chap is thought to have predicted the Great Fire of London, the rise of Hitler, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the moon landing, and 9/11. It is also said that he predicted both of the world wars, and, wait for it, the Third World War. The Frenchman warned that, and I quote, "The big war will start in France and all Europe will be attacked. It will be long and terrifying for everyone, and then finally there'll be peace, but only few will enjoy it." He says World War III will last 27 years. When will it start? 2018 apparently. Great. Oh, and he also warned that there'd be a horrible earthquake and a volcanic eruption this year. We'll get back to that one later. Both more tangible and practical than Nostradamus' warning, we have a well-meaning warning from ancient Japanese people that has largely been ignored. Coming into number 9, we have the tsunami stones. Some things aren't written in stone, but these ancient warnings were. Still, some people chose to ignore them, leading to thousands of deaths. Japan is amid 4 tectonic plates, making it extremely vulnerable to natural disaster. Japan has a huge coastline, and when earthquakes happen in the ocean, they generate tsunamis. Hundreds of tsunami stones dot the coast of Japan, dating back over centuries. Now, these stones warn future generations where not to build in case of disaster. One stone reads, "High dwellings are the peace and harmony of our descendants. Remember the calamity of our great tsunamis. Do not build any homes below this point." Pretty loud and clear, right? While some of Japan's historic disasters may have gone undocumented, these stones speak volumes as to the devastation they must have caused. Residents of Aniyoshi heeded their ancestors' warnings and never built below the stones. They were fine in the tsunami. Sadly, a lot of developers ignored the ancient warnings around the coast, especially during the social boom years following World War II. Thinking that seawalls and modern tech was enough to save them, many built below the stones. And don't say they didn't warn you, because none of these settlements survived the 2011 tsunami. This tsunami was totally devastating, and it is estimated that over 20,000 people died. Next up, we have a warning from the past and present that will one day very much affect our future. Coming in at number 8, we have the imminent eruption of Yellowstone. Remember what Nostradamus said? Well, think about that when we talk about Yellowstone. The Yellowstone volcano is a supervolcano waiting to blow. The information isn't anything new. Scientists have been warning people for years. Now, the last time the volcano erupted was 6,400 years ago, roughly 6,400 years after its previous explosion. Notice the pattern there? Honey is due. If and when this supervolcano blows, it will be devastating for almost the entirety of the United States and parts of Canada. The ash would fall as far as Washington, D.C. and Toronto. Salt Lake City, Denver, and Casper are total goners. Things wouldn't be looking great in Albuquerque, Kansas City, or San Francisco either. Now, the volcanic ash would be the main issue, choking people and devastating agriculture whilst polluting water supplies. While we know about the volcano, for some reason, cities keep being developed within the immediate destruction zone. The same thing actually goes for Italy. Remember Pompeii and the disaster that happened back then? Romans kept on building around Vesuvius. Nostradamus had a few terse words about that too. Coming in at number 7, we have a climate warning from 1847. George Perkins Marsh, a Vermont congressman and America's first environmentalist, predicted the horrors of climate change a long time ago. In mid-19th century language that's slightly turgid to our modern ears, Marsh basically warned that if we we keep on burning fossil fuels and messing with natural environments, like with swamp draining and deforestation, we would screw over ourselves in the future. In a speech delivered to the Agricultural Society of Rutland County, Marsh acknowledged the effect human actions was having on the climate across the world. So his observations were way back in 1847, 171 years ago. Things have only accelerated over the past nearly 2 centuries, with humans burning more fuel and farming more animals and cutting down more trees than ever. Marsh, a revered scholar and writer who studied his whole life and spoke over 20 languages, was largely ignored in his lifetime. Although more and more people are awakening to the perils of climate change, his warning is still not totally heeded today. Around 15,000 scientists have agreed that we are already past the point of no return when it comes to climate change. So sad at number 6, we have the warning of a cockpit catastrophe. A lot of the warnings or predictions, as you may consider them to be, came decades or more before the disasters they could avert, but this eerie warning came just 2 months before 150 people were murdered. Dutch pilot Jan Crocheret, a captain for Emirates Airline, wrote an article for a specialist flight magazine, Pilot and Plane. Now, this article came in early 2015, 2 months before co-pilot Andreas Lubitz plunged Germanwings Flight 9525 into the French Alps. Jan wrote of the perils of the internal locking cockpit, which were installed as a safety measure following 9/11. Now, the doors are bulletproof and work so that nobody can storm a cockpit and hijack a plane ever. However, in this article, Crocheret speculated that this could be abused by a corrupt co-pilot. He wrote how you never know who you're sitting next to, you never know what they're thinking and what they're feeling. He said that he feared that one day he could go to the toilet and his co-pilot could lock him out of the cockpit. He wrote that there's little choice then but to go to the passengers and sit and wait to see what the future brings. Now, really sadly, this is exactly what happened with the Germanwings flight. Lubitz locked Captain Patrick Sonderheim out and convinced him to use the toilet. He couldn't get back in, then he crashed the plane. Coming in at number 5, we have the ice sheet collapse. 50 years ago, there was a lot going on in the world. The US and the USSR were embroiled in the Cold War. Also, there was a space race going on, keeping headlines occupied. However, in 1968, American glaciologist John Mercer was studying the ice sheet in Antarctica. He wrote a paper calling the West Antarctic ice sheet vulnerable and unstable, warning that it was melting and as a result, sea levels were rising. Ignoring this warning for decades until new studies did conclude the same thing, scientists are now scratching their heads at what they can actually do about it. The ice sheet holds enough water to raise global sea levels by 3 meters, which when you think about how much water there already is on Earth is a lot. Mercer discussed the rate at which the ice was melting, which has now more than doubled, so the ice is melting faster than ever. As we keep on burning fossil fuels and prioritizing beef production, this temperature of the world is continuing to rise. Yeah, we would be in trouble if the West Antarctic sheet melted, but if all of the ice caps melted, well, this is what the United States would look like. There again, we have Europe, Asia, and Australia. As you can see, things aren't looking great. Now, this warning was one of the reasons the Paris Agreement of 2015 was drawn up, which commits the world to limiting warming by just 1.5 to 2 degrees. Now, unfortunately, President Trump wants to withdraw from this agreement. I don't know about you, but losing the world's most famous cities to the ocean is a pretty scary thought, especially when we've been warned about it. Coming into number 4, we have asbestos and the death of millions. So what is asbestos? It is a naturally occurring fibrous mineral that is known for its strength and resistance to fire. Sadly, as good as it seems for insulation, inhalation of its fibers causes cancer. Asbestos began being used in homes and businesses in the 20th century, becoming wildly popular. Concern about asbestos emerged in the 1930s, but a 1938 report that proved death by the product was airborne was ignored and then buried. Despite health warnings, it was continually used as insulation up until it was banned in the 1980s. Even now, 125 million people in the world are exposed to asbestos in the workplace. Now, shockingly, up until recently, the only places to fully ban the killer substance were Japan and Europe. Canada only banned it in 2018 and is still in use in the USA. It is thought that the substance kills between 12,000 to 15,000 Americans each year, and you know what? The warnings have been there for decades. Coming into number 3, we have Europe the wasteland and America the broken broken. We can't do a list about scary messages from the past and not include the biggest super creep of them all, Baba Vanga. And actually, this isn't the last time you're gonna hear about her, so keep listening. Baba conked it in 1996, but is still freaking people out with her scary warnings, and actually, they're starting to come true. Firstly, she predicted the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Chernobyl disaster, and the 9/11 attacks, and she predicted that the 44th president of the United States would be black. So this is what she had to say about Europe and America. Baba V predicted the rise of Vladimir Putin. She predicted that a nuclear war will break out and that Europe will be the hardest hit. She said that the most people will abandon Europe and nuclear fallout will give most inhabitants skin cancer. She also predicted that by 2043 a Muslim caliphate would be established in Rome following years of war. Regarding the United States, she said that the 45th president would be the last ever prez, so things aren't looking great for Trump. She also said that he would divide the North and South and ultimately bring down the country. Thanks for that, Babs. You're always a ray of sunshine. Alright, next up we have one of the biggest historical warnings of all time. We have the Nazis at number 2. The rise of Adolf Hitler, his manipulation of the National Socialist German Worker Party, his establishment of a dictatorship in the Third Reich is one of the most historically interesting and devastating things to ever happen to humanity. The way Hitler managed to harbour social disquiet as political fuel, brainwash a nation, and enact ethnic cleansing was disgustingly artful and should serve as the biggest warning in social history that evil doesn't always arrive to you dressed as the devil, but often as a confident figure offering a better future. The rise of Adolf Hitler should have taught us to pay very close attention when a human both charms, cheats, and bullies their way to the top, manipulates the media, and singles out a race or religion for persecution. Did we learn our lessons from Hitler's Anschluss of Austria? If so, shouldn't Vladimir Putin's annexation of Crimea be a red light? Should China's one-party state worry us? Should we worry about Trump inviting only preferred news publications to his press conferences? Should we be worried about asking to present our social media passwords to custom officials? And should we be worried about Kim Jong-un? It isn't necessarily the Nazi years that should be the warning to us, it is the years of discontent leading up to the Third Reich that are a particular concern here. A 1997 BBC documentary film series called The Nazis: A Warning from History was released, and honestly, it is such a good watch. Nazis and World War II destroyed a lot, but imagine what a modern day Hitler could do with nuclear weapons. Warning! Warning. Okay, we of course need to end this list with some classic Baba Vags and her warnings that, you know, she's got for the future and the end of the Earth and the universe. That's right, coming into number 1, the end of the Earth will come in 2341. Mate, according to Babs, it is literally all to come. From 2033 to 45, the polar ice caps are gonna melt, but then cloning's gonna happen and disease will be cured. But don't celebrate too soon because the US will fight the Muslims in Rome using freezeways. Actually, that sounds pretty cool. In 2256, Mars will demand independence, and something terrible will be found in the galaxy as we search for further alien life. We will master time travel in 2304, but sadly a series of man-made disasters will destroy the Earth once and for all in 2341. Vanga warns that humanity will escape to another solar system, but resources will be scarce, which will lead to more war. She then predicts another dark age in 3815, which ends in 3878, and really, it's all just numbers now. By the year 4674, humans and aliens will have started breeding with a universal population of 340 billion. Sadly though, the universe party is all over in the year 5079, or so she warns. Bit of a buzzkill, isn't she? Dinosaurs walked the Earth for 165 million years, but humans have what, 23,000 years on Earth, then 2,000 more in space, and then it's all over. Can these warnings and predictions be changed if we play nice? That's the question on everyone's lips. Coming in at number 10, we have the apocalypse. The end of the world has been predicted so many times in history, and it's hard to take those warnings seriously, like so many times. Nonetheless, right now, some Christian conspiracists are predicting that the end of days is coming in 2021. The Bible does actually talk about the end of days, and that book dates back thousands of years. The World Bible Society also says that Jesus will return after the end of days in 2028. Apparently this comes from studying the Bible and pinpointing a date for the rapture. Society President Dr. B. Shaw said that 7 major signs have already been fulfilled, 5 major signs are currently being fulfilled, and 15 more major signs are yet to be fulfilled. I don't know, I'm not sold on this one. Coming in at number 9, we have a warning from the Egyptian tombs. The curse of the pharaohs. Classic. The curse of King Tutankhamun's tomb warned people off disturbing it for thousands of years. King Tutankhamun died in 1400 BC and was buried in a chamber in Thebes in Egypt. When his body was buried, the ancient Egyptians wrote a warning, as they did on many other burial chambers. Fast forward around 2,500 years and Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter's team ignored the warnings and entered King Tut's tomb in February 1923. This is really when the trouble began to start. It seems the curse was very much unleashed despite thousands of years of dormancy. 9 people directly related to the excavation and tomb opening died shortly after the burial chamber was breached. This included the financial backer of the excavation, Lord Carnarvon, and 2 of his relatives. Similar cases of plagues and pestilence followed after opening other Egyptian burial chambers. I guess don't say they didn't warn you, because they did. I'm honestly not too sure if I believe in the curse or not, but I have to say it certainly is a worrying coincidence. Okay, this however I do believe in. We have the Mayan ruins and their stark warning against deforestation at number 8. The Mayan civilization was one of the earliest intelligent empires and certainly rivaled the ancient Greeks, Egyptians, and Romans. Between 2000 BC and 250 AD, the Mayans thrived. They had complex societies with farming, elaborate architecture, writing methods, artwork, and infrastructure. The problem was that the Mayans grew haphazardly, and all of a sudden, their booming population of 19 million started to decline and then almost entirely died out. Why? What was left of the Mayans soon ran into the invading Spanish colonists, and by this point, they didn't have the manpower to stave them off. The lasting Mayan structures, for example the Chichen Itza in Mexico, serve as a sad warning that civilizations can and will die out. So, once again, what happened? There is a lot of evidence to suggest that deforestation and subsequent local climate and drought killed them all off. The Mayans chopped and burned wood at an alarming rate. It seems it took the burning of 20 trees to create just 1 single square meter of city space. Because cleared land absorbs less solar radiation, less water evaporates from its surface, making clouds and rainfall more scarce. So basically, deforestation added to what was already a time of drought. The lack of forest cover also contributed to erosion and soil depletion, which made farming and harvesting even harder. The Mayans were around longer than we as modern nations have been, and I have to say, warning, modern humans, warning. If we don't learn from their mistake, perhaps we will have even more elaborate ruins than they did. Deforestation is going to be a problem. Coming in at number 7, we have the dodo extinction. The last dodo died 350 years ago. Long before then, and long after, species have died out, but somehow the dodo has become the poster boy for mass extinction. When the Dutch invaded the island of Mauritius, the bird had been plentiful, but it went extinct within 100 years. Why? Well, the Dutch may have hunted and eaten them, but more likely, ship rats and other animals brought over to the island by the ship ate the dodo eggs and outcompeted the birds for food. Sadly, by the 1660s, the dodos were lost forever. Yes, once again, extinctions do happen naturally over time, but this one was on us. This wasn't the first time human interference of a habitat led to the extinctions. It certainly wasn't going to be the last. It was a warning and we didn't listen, or if we did listen, we didn't care. In the past 500 years, we have been directly responsible for the total extinction of thousands upon thousands of species and the critical endangerment of thousands more. Why does it matter, some of you may say? Well, even if you're totally devoid of compassion, species balance out natural ecosystems, and without them, they can collapse. Have you ever heard the answer to the question, what would happen if all the bees died out, for example? If you haven't, I don't know, maybe you want to give it a listen. Coming in at number 6, we have Glacier 511. The world's deadliest avalanche could have been avoided had the Peruvian authorities listened to American scientists David Baynes and Charles Sawyer. These guys noticed that a glacier in the area, Glacier 511, was extremely unstable. When they told authorities in 1962, they were simply thrown in jail. Despite warning the Peruvian government that a glacier would soon cause a deadly avalanche, nobody listened. Just 8 years later, the avalanche came and buried 25,000 people under ice. In total, there were 70,000 casualties. Coming into number 5, we have the warning of antibiotic resistance. Alexander Fleming was given a Nobel Peace Prize for his work utilizing penicillin to create antibiotics and cure cure serious bacterial illnesses. When accepting his prize in 1945, he warned us of a future where frequent and improper use of antibiotics could lead to superbugs. That warning has been echoed by medics across time, who warn that by not taking the right dosages of medicines, we can allow our bodies to become resistant to the drug. Then, it is possible for us to spread this resistant sickness to others, which is how a very, very dangerous pandemic could start, and we wouldn't then be able to cure it. If a post-antibiotic era does come, some estimate by 2050 it could kill more people than cancer. Coming in at number 4, we have the stark warning by Koji Minora about Fukushima. Fukushima is described as the worst nuclear disaster in the world. I actually recently watched an episode of Dark Tourism with David Farrier, who I might, side note, be a little bit in love with, and he was on a nuclear tour and registered some insane off-the-charts radiation levels, even in the areas of Japan that the Japanese government have deemed safe. What is going on? So the Fukushima disaster happened in 2011 as a result of the tsunami and the Tohoku earthquake. It was entirely preventable if people would listen to not one, but 2 scary warnings. Koji Minora had read an ancient poem that described an earthquake in the northeast of Japan. On investigating, he found that in the year 869 AD, an earthquake had erupted in the area of Fukushima. This earthquake erupted every 1,000 years or so, meaning that actually we were overdue, and those who built the nuclear plant must have known that, or they absolutely should have done. He warned people, they ignored him. He spent 20 years trying to warn as many people as possible, publishing his works in magazines. Again, his warnings fell on deaf ears. He and the ancient poem were proven correct in 2011, and now parts of Japan are in utter ruin or totally contaminated. Coming into number 3, we have The Simpsons. We've done a whole top 10 list of the ways The Simpsons predicted the future, so I definitely encourage you guys to watch that. Either way, The Simpsons writer Matt Groening has been predicting the future for years. The Simpsons warned us about Siegfried and Roy's tiger attack 10 years in advance. We were warned about faulty voting machines, the NSA spying scandal, the Ebola outbreak, and they even predicted Donald Trump would be president long before he considered running. Lisa says that she inherited debt from her predecessor, Donald Trump. Let's hope that the economy part isn't a warning, just unfortunate non-coincidence. Coming in at number 2, we have the Cold War false warning of 1983. Some of you watching might not know about the night of September the 26th, 1983. A lot of us weren't even alive, but our parents and their parents probably were. Many of them may not have known that their lives were very nearly over. This was the night that the world almost ended. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was in charge of the Soviet Union's nuclear missile early warning system and the retaliation. In this early autumn evening, the bright red warning lights in a secret control station flashed. They were flashing to warn of an incoming missile from the United States. In the Cold War, the USA and the Soviet Union had a policy of mutually assured destruction. Now, Petrov kept his cool, unsure if the warning lights were a false alarm, as he only saw what looked like 5 missiles incoming. He had the sense to suspect that if Americans were going to strike unannounced, they would probably do so with more than 5 missiles. Rather than pressing his missile release button to fire back at the USA, he simply waited. A dangerous game, sure, but within 15 minutes he realized that this was indeed a false alarm. So many people in charge would have been hot-headed and fired back without any hesitation. Had the USSR struck America, a full-blown nuclear war would have begun that night, ending life as we know it today. Luckily, Petrov was shrewd and composed, but the incident serves as a warning not to trust computer systems over human judgment. It's also a warning that hotheads with fingers on buttons might just cost us our lives. Not naming any names. Finally, coming into number 1, we have George Orwell's 1984 warning of the surveillance state. Orwell wrote 1984 almost 70 years ago in 1949. While his famous literary work was set 35 years into his future, the totalitarian state he envisaged was a hyper-reality, a fiction imagined by exaggerated exaggerating trends he saw in the modernizing world. It turns out that 70 years later, his book may be less fiction than it is a word of warning. Orwell predicted CCTV and hidden cameras, as well as government spying on private conversations, which, if we learned anything from Ed Snowden, is definitely happening. He also predicted that televisions would be used to listen to civilians. Now, these days there's a lot of speculation that our smartphones might be listening to us. John McAfee, maker of antivirus systems, said, "If you give me just a small amount of information about yourself, I promise you, within 3 days I can turn on the camera in your computer at home and watch whatever you're doing." Basically, in short, 70 years ago, George Orwell warned us of the surveillance state.